Tell me what happened last Saturday.
From the beginning?
Yeah.
On the evening of December 1st, 2018, security cameras captured 22-year-old Grace Mullane enjoying what seemed like an ordinary night out in Auckland, New Zealand. She had met a man named Jesse through Tinder just hours earlier, and the two were seen leaving a local bar together, smiling, laughing, and heading toward a nearby hotel. To anyone watching, it looked like a budding connection. But what unfolded next would turn this casual encounter into a tragic international mystery. Not long after entering Jesse's hotel room, Grace was never seen again. The next day, which also happened to be her birthday, her phone went silent. She missed calls, ignored messages, and didn't respond to her family's wishes. Days passed with no contact. Concern quickly turned to panic, and soon Grace was reported missing. Meanwhile, Jesse was spotted on hotel surveillance, calmly entering and exiting elevators. He carried a suitcase. He bought cleaning products. Alone, his actions didn't raise alarm. But soon, investigators would uncover a horrifying truth, one that shook not only Grace's loved ones, but an entire nation. And just as the world began to grasp the weight of what had happened, another chilling detail surfaced. Jesse had already arranged another Tinder date just hours after Grace's disappearance. Had police not intervened in time, this story might have ended with even more victims. On the evening of December 1st, 2018, 22-year-old Grace Mullane stepped out of her hostel in Auckland, New Zealand. She had just wrapped up a long backpacking trip from the UK, filled with hopes of exploring new places and meeting new people. That night, she was headed to meet a man she had recently matched with on Tinder, Jesse Kempson. At the same time, Jesse was seated at a local bar, downing several beers in anticipation of their date. By the time he left, at least 4 empty bottles remained on the table. Their first meeting spot was a public location, bustling with people, a place where Grace likely felt safe meeting someone new. But her sense of comfort was an illusion. Jesse had no intentions of doing anything reckless in public. He was patient, waiting for the moment they'd be alone. Their night progressed smoothly. They moved to another bar where they shared drinks for over an hour. At 7:15 p.m., they visited a nearby Mexican bar, continuing the flow of conversation and cocktails. By 8:30 p.m., they were at a third venue, a bar known as the Bluestone Room. It was here, at 8:54 p.m., that the two shared their first kiss. Jesse excused himself to the restroom, and Grace, feeling excited, texted her friends. She told them how well the date was going, that she and Jesse just clicked. It would be the last message she ever sent. Grace was likely filled with excitement, ready to spend time with someone she genuinely liked. But she couldn't have known the horror that awaited her. By the next morning, Grace's phone began receiving a flood of messages. It was her birthday, a day usually filled with joy and love from family and friends, but each message went unanswered. The silence was the first chilling sign that something was terribly wrong. At exactly 8 a.m., Jesse was caught on the hotel's elevator security footage again, this time alone. He threw a brief, uneasy glance at the camera. Some might assume he was out getting coffee for the birthday girl, but the truth was far more sinister. Sometime during the night, Jesse had murdered Grace by strangulation, and now he was in a rush to cover his tracks. By 8:07 a.m., just minutes after his elevator appearance, Jesse began what would become one of the most disturbing shopping sprees imaginable. His first stop, a retail store on Elliott Street, where he purchased a large suitcase, one big enough to hold a human body. He carefully checked the dimensions, ensuring it would suit his grim plan. Next, he visited another store to buy a set of cleaning products, fully prepared to scrub away the evidence left behind in his apartment. After spending several hours inside his unit, he emerged again at 10:42 a.m., hailing a taxi to Apex Car Rentals. There, he picked up a vehicle, and what followed sent a wave of urgency through the police force. With Grace's lifeless body still lying in the apartment, Jesse went on yet another Tinder date. Wearing the exact same clothes from the night before, possibly even the same outfit he wore during the murder, he met another woman. It's unclear if Jesse had been as forward in his initial messages to her, but one thing is certain: this woman would walk into one of the most terrifying experiences of her life. During their brief encounter, Jesse reportedly brought up a topic so bizarre and unsettling that it sent alarm bells ringing. He casually asked her where she thought was the best place to hide a dead body. Shocked and disturbed, the woman ended the date quickly and left. Later, she would learn that her instincts had likely saved her life. She had narrowly escaped the same fate as Grace. Back at the hotel, the cover-up was in full swing. At 8:56 p.m., CCTV showed Jesse returning to his apartment with a carpet cleaner in hand, along with extra detergent to make sure the job was done thoroughly. Half an hour later, the fruits of his gruesome labor were on full display. He reappeared in the elevator, pushing a trolley stacked with luggage. One bag being the large suitcase he bought earlier. It was too heavy to carry, for good reason. Inside was Grace's body. He couldn't just walk around the city with something so suspicious. That's why he had rented a car earlier. He quickly loaded the vehicle with the bags and prepared to dispose of the evidence in a location he hoped no one would ever discover. The next morning, Jesse's actions continued to betray him. At 7 a.m., he purchased a shovel, then headed back to his apartment to gather some of his clothes, which he later dropped off at a dry cleaner, possibly to eliminate more DNA traces. Along the way, he tossed a large trash bag into a public bin. Yet another attempt to erase anything linking him to the crime. Then, Jesse took the rental car to a cleaning service, directing special attention to the back seat, the same area where Grace's body had been stored just hours before. While Jesse went about his day as though nothing had happened, Grace's family and friends were enduring a nightmare. For 2 long days, no one had heard from her. She had vanished without a trace. No social media updates, no replies to messages. Nothing. On December 5th, her parents contacted the Auckland police and officially reported her missing. Desperate and fearing the worst, Grace's father, David Mullane, boarded a flight to New Zealand. Upon arrival, he gave an emotional public appeal, pleading for help to find his daughter. But by then, investigators were already following the trail.
Grace has been missing for several days, and as a family we've been extremely concerned for her welfare. Do anybody who has seen, spoken to, or come into contact with Grace come forward and contact the investigation team.
As the story gained national attention, Grace's father's emotional plea was broadcast across media outlets throughout New Zealand and beyond. It's almost certain that Jesse saw it, perhaps even watched the press conference himself. But if he felt any remorse, he showed none. The Mullane family's desperate calls went unanswered. Behind the scenes, however, Auckland police were moving fast. They began retracing Grace's final known steps, piecing together a timeline from digital breadcrumbs, including CCTV footage and app data. It wasn't long before they uncovered that she had been out on a date with a man she met through Tinder. From there, investigators sifted through hours of surveillance video across several locations. Eventually, their search paid off. They identified the man Grace had last been seen with and tracked him back to a room at the City Life Hotel, Jesse Kempson's temporary residence. At 3 p.m. on December 5th, officers arrived at the hotel to speak with their prime suspect. But things nearly went sideways. As police entered the lobby, Jesse caught a glimpse of them and tried to play it cool. Calmly, he turned away and began strolling toward the exit as if nothing was wrong, hoping that if he acted normal, no one would stop him. But the detectives were sharp. They recognized him instantly and weren't fooled for a second. Before he could make it through the door, they intercepted and detained him on the spot. Now in custody, Jesse had a choice: tell the truth and potentially soften the consequences, or try to manipulate his way out. He chose the latter. Inside the interrogation room, he leaned into deception, fabricating a version of events he hoped would shield him from the inevitable. What Jesse didn't realize was that the investigators already had everything they needed: hours of security footage, witness statements, GPS data, and a timeline that contradicted nearly every word he was about to say. Still, as the interview began, he spoke casually, recounting how he met Grace and what they did that evening. In the early moments, there was no need for him to lie, yet he began weaving a version of the night that was already falling apart under the weight of evidence.
Tell us about Grace.
So I was talking to Grace on Tinder.
Yeah.
We'd matched on Friday. I saw that we'd matched the next day on Saturday. And then we met at Sky City. And then we decided that we were going up to Andy's Burger Bar, which is on the first floor.
It didn't take long for Jesse to trip over his own lies. Early in the interview, he claimed that Grace was the one eager to meet up, suggesting she had been the one pushing for the date. But investigators already had access to their message history, and it clearly showed the opposite. Jesse had been persistent, initiating conversation, pushing to meet quickly, and steering the plans from the very beginning. This contradiction marked his first clear misstep, exposing the cracks in his carefully crafted story. And for detectives, it was a signal this wasn't just a misunderstanding. Jesse was trying to manipulate the truth.
Whose idea was it to go to that particular burger place?
Me. Because I didn't initially know that she was real.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a lot of... So have you heard of catfish?
No.
So catfishing is where someone uses your profile or uses your photos and pretends to be you and then meets and you're a completely different person.
Right.
And it's on Tinder, it's all about the way you look. And so if they use more endearing photos, you're more likely to swipe for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does meeting in a public place sort of protect you from meeting someone who's not as good looking as...
Well, there's security there. So if she wasn't who she said she was, at least in my mind I'd feel safe. I go down Victoria Street, straight down to the bottom, and then hang a left, and I head towards the viaduct.
You go to the viaduct a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You've kind of walked in a bit of a funny direction if you were planning to go to the viaduct.
Well, it's the direction I normally go.
Yeah. It's I'm just sort of saying, like, if you were planning to go to the viaduct.
I normally go down Queen Street and then cross at the bottom of Queen Street, go through the containers, and then walk along the wharf.
Yeah. Is there a particular reason you would kind of do that?
I feel safer down that way.
The lead investigator quickly picked up on the inconsistencies. Jesse's behavior felt off, his tone too casual, his answers too vague. Nothing he said quite lined up with what the police already knew. And if he was lying, it wouldn't take much pressure to unravel his story. Sensing the cracks, the detective began to turn up the heat. A few sharp questions, calm but direct, were all it took to throw Jesse off balance.
Actually don't know if she's been murdered or not yet. She may be alive and well.
Okay.
But she might also be dead. Okay? And it could be that you've done it.
Hey, I just want to ask a question. Have I been arrested for something I didn't do?
You haven't been arrested, mate.
Oh.
No.
Oh. Holy.
At this stage, Jesse hadn't been formally arrested. Not yet. But Auckland police were already confident that he was either directly responsible for Grace's disappearance, or at the very least, deeply involved. And as investigators dug deeper, the case against him only grew stronger. It wasn't just the surveillance footage that painted a damning picture. It was everything else they uncovered along the way. Jesse's suspicious shopping spree the morning after the date, the suitcase, the cleaning supplies, even an extended hotel stay, were all paid for using Grace's credit card. Yes, that's right. Not only did Jesse buy the very tools to hide her body with Grace's own money, but it's highly likely he used that same card to pay for drinks during his second Tinder date the following night. The extra night at the City Life Hotel had only one purpose: to give Jesse time to clean up the scene. But even with a carpet cleaner and industrial-strength detergent, it was never going to be enough. When police finally searched his apartment, what they found confirmed their worst fears. Traces of Grace's blood were discovered, undeniable proof that something violent had occurred inside that room. Combined with the credit card records, CCTV footage, digital data, and phone location tracking that placed both Grace and Jesse at the same place at the same time, the evidence was overwhelming. With the walls closing in, detectives brought Jesse in for a second interview on December 7th. This time, they didn't leave him room to maneuver. They laid out the evidence, piece by piece, cornering him with a case he could no longer escape.
To me about 50 Shades of Grey, which is a sex fantasy movie that's out. We started having sex. At first it was just normal. It was very placid. And then she asked me if we could get into bondage. And then all I remember is falling asleep in the shower. I need to stop. I need to go.
Would you like some fresh air?
Yeah, please. I was in shock and I didn't know what to do. I went downstairs and I was just, I don't know, I was all over the place. I didn't believe what had happened. I was just terrified and scared. I thought that she had gone. I thought she had left.
Pathologist, specialist doctor, will perform a post-mortem. Yeah. They're very skilled at establishing people's causes of death. Do you understand that?
Yeah. I went to the warehouse at the atrium and bought a suitcase. I went back and I was just in shock because it just didn't seem right. I left to go and get cleaning products. So I messaged a friend and said I'll meet you at Revelry. After finishing drinks with her, I got back to City Life. And the whole time I just kept saying, I'm sorry. And then I went downstairs and I grabbed the porter thing and I put the suitcase on top of the porter thing. I drove the hire car into Wilson's car park and parked it. I woke up the next day at about 5 a.m. and drove the car out to Cumu. At first I had picked up a shovel from ITM at Cumu. I ended up driving towards the Waitakaries. I went into the bush, I dug a hole, I went and got the suitcase and I covered the hole and then I drove.
Where is her possessions?
I threw them in the rubbish.
Whereabouts?
Albert Park, rubbish.
Right. So what items of her property have been disposed of in Albert Park?
Everything.
All of her clothing?
Everything that was in the room.
Whereabouts did you clean the car? The outside of the car?
I think it was in Henderson. I don't know West very well.
Okay. And what did you use to clean the car?
A water blaster thing from a car cleaning place.
Did she have any injuries?
Not that I can remember. I was just panicking.
Did you inflict any injuries on her that caused her to die?
No.
Did you kill Grace Mullane? Okay. And you're under arrest for the murder of Grace Mullane on or about the 2nd of December. You understand?
Yep.
Did you intend to cause her death?
No.
Are you ready to take us to where she is?
The 50 Shades of Grey defense. The idea is that someone may consent to being harmed during intimacy, knowing the dangers involved, if they made no indication to stop. Then it would be seen as an accident, and the person responsible shouldn't face a murder charge. But this defense has always been seen as more of a scapegoat used by lawyers to try and get their defendant off with a lighter sentence, which in this case would be manslaughter. This doesn't change what happened after Grace's death and the disturbing series of events uncovered during the investigation from December 1st, the day before the date, all the way to December 7th. Cops found Google searches made by Jesse looking for a place to hide the body. He'd also taken photos of Grace's body. Before and after he packed her into the suitcase, they found Grace's body on December 9th, 2018 in the Waitakere Ranges, just outside of Auckland. It was determined that she was strangled and had bruises on her arms and chest, consistent with being pinned down in New Zealand. There is no such thing as first-degree or second-degree murder. All charges are treated the same. Carrying a life sentence that meant there was no investigation into the premeditation. All that mattered was if Jesse killed her or not. It was that simple. Jesse maintained his innocence, but was eventually found guilty. And on February 21st, 2020, he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years after his trial. We hope you found this video insightful. Let us know your thoughts on this case in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more compelling stories like this. Thank you for watching.